Good evening, folks. Ken Hovind here and the crew at Dinosaur Adventureland in lovely Lenox, Alabama. Tonight is Whack An Atheist night. We do it sweetly in Christian love because we want to get them converted. That's the goal here. We've been looking frantically for one brain cell, and those who believe there's no God, and I don't think there's one. The Bible says they're a fool if they don't believe in Him. Psalm 53:1. So I don't see how anybody can look at something like this and say it just happened by chance. I think somebody designed it. I think that's like a 3-year-old can figure that out, okay? So I don't think there's a brain cell at all. If you believe there's no God, you're in really trouble. The Bible says, smite a scorner and the simple will beware. We do this to help you people realize, man, these guys are nuts saying there's no God. So we're whacking them sweetly in Christian love. Whack An Atheist is fun, it's easy to learn, and it's addictive. I love doing these Wednesday night Whack An Atheist Wednesday. Even small children can learn how stupid evolution is, and they can stand up in their kindergarten class. Teacher, that's not true. Not true. Dinosaurs did not live millions of years. One guy called me one time. He said, Brother Hovind, my daughter's in 2nd grade. She loves your videos, loves them. She said her teacher called me today and said, every time I say something about evolution, your daughter stops me and says, no, that's not right. She said, the teacher said, I'm just going to quit teaching evolution until your daughter's out of my class and go next year. My first thought was, yay. And then I thought, wait, why are we sending 2nd graders off to war? Parents ought to be fighting this battle. Anyway, it is stupid to believe you came from a rock. So we're going to whack you sweetly in Christian love, and keep your head down, you won't get whacked. We'd like to get one of these whack-a-mole games and put some atheist pictures on there to whack them sweetly. Okay, February 26, 2020. God made everything in 6 days, and dinosaurs lived with man, and the evolution theory is dumb. Our internet is out. We hit the cable with the tractor. Didn't know where it was buried, but it might be up to 2 weeks. We're in Lenox, you know. First they got to find Lenox, and then they got to come out here and fix it. But I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel all the radio programs, all the debates for at least the next week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. We'll see. So any visitors tonight? I don't see anybody here new. Okay. Okay, John Newton, back in the 1700s, was a slave trader. He said he hauled, I forget how many people he said he hauled into slavery. Do you remember the number? It was a lot. Like thousands of people. He brought them into slavery. And tonight we're going to be talking about the topic of slavery. Well, John Newton got gloriously saved in the late 1700s. And he wrote probably the most popular song in the entire world among Christians. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. All right, Timmy, swing it over there.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home.
Amen. And it is amazing grace. Grace is God's riches at Christ's expense. He paid for it so we can have this amazing grace. All right, let's see. So, the phony Professor Dave, who believes we all came from a rock, issued a challenge to me a few days ago, February 14th, and he said he's going to ask me 5 questions. It's pretty obvious he's still smarting from the whipping I gave him a month ago, January 20th, on the Modern Day Debate Show, even though he interrupted me a bunch of times, okay? You can look that up. That was streamed live on, I forget, what's called, Modern Day, no, what's the name of their show? I don't know, it's on there somewhere. Search for it. Okay. So Dave made it plain that he will not promise to not interrupt, so we'll have to do this by video exchanges. Dave, you said you're going to ask me 5 questions. And you love to make ad hominem attacks and post funny pictures of me to distract attention from the silly religion of the evolution religion you believe in. So I'll mimic him for a second and point out that Mr. Math Professor can't seem to count. So I numbered his question 1 as question 1A, B, C. The total of 20 questions in his 5 questions. Mackenzie, you can count to 100, right? And you're 5. Okay. Yeah, okay. Here's question 1A. We answered this last week. I thoroughly answered his question about a supposed math error in the Bible and the value of pi. You can watch that from last week's Whack an Atheist. Tonight we're going to answer the question about, does the Bible endorse slavery? So I labeled it as question 1B. He talked about Leviticus chapter 25. We'll be getting there. Does the Bible endorse slavery? Tomorrow, or next Wednesday night, we'll be doing question 1C. Does the Bible endorse genocide? Kill them all, God said. Really? Why? Okay. Question 1C. So let's see. There, okay. He said he wants me to defend the validity of that passage. I think it's 202. Okay, there we go. Wow. Does the Bible condone slavery? Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Your male and female slaves, let's see. Right there. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country. They will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. Okay, let's see. He wants me to defend the validity of this passage. Well, David, let me start off by saying, oh, is SpongeBob in the way there? No? Okay. All right. I don't think you really want an answer. You are simply looking for any excuse to criticize the Bible to justify your rejection of God and justify your party lifestyle. You have your eyes closed and your ears plugged. Son, you don't want an answer, but I'm going to give one anyway, because I think some people who watch this might say, wow, the Bible is right. So, first of all, Dave, you need to get a real Bible to see what it says about the subject before you criticize it. You are not quoting from a King James Bible. The only mention of the word slave in the King James Bible is one time here in Jeremiah chapter 2. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? Slaves, plural, is only mentioned one time in the Bible in Revelation 18. And cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, etc., and chariots and slaves and souls of men. So that's the only 2 times slavery is mentioned in the Bible. Now, it does talk about bondage and bondservants, and that would be the equivalent of slavery. That's mentioned 39 times in the Bible. But I think it's every time, I may be mistaken, I counted most of them, it's talking about what Egypt did to Israel. Egypt made the Israelis slaves. That was real slavery, okay? So God has already shown his hatred for slavery before the book of Leviticus was written, talking about your Leviticus question about slavery. In the book of Exodus, right after the 10 Commandments, God said, he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. I think God's making it pretty clear. He's against slavery. Now that's different than servitude or voluntary, making a contract to go work for somebody. We'll get into that in a minute. The word slavery here is the problem. In the Bible, it actually is the word servant in the King James Bible every time. That the other new versions translate it slavery. I've heard people say, I'm a slave of Christ. Not me. Slave is an involuntary relationship. Servitude is voluntary. I don't have to serve God. I want to. So it's more like a man taking a job to work off a debt. This is not 19th century slavery in the South, where you could beat your slave, sometimes beat them to death, and nothing would happen. So the 19th century antebellums, I'm in Alabama, you know, the slavery they had around here was oftentimes bitter bondage and is not at all scriptural. So what we're talking about is servitude. Here's what the passage really says in a real Bible, Dave, the King James Bible, right here. If thy brother be waxen poor, how is it possible to become poor? What can you do to become poor? Spend all your money.
Spend it all.
Yeah, there we go. But you can, some people, my dad said, if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. Every time, right? You can get poor by being lazy. You can have something happen to you health-wise and become poor. You can have the economy go bad in your country and the whole country becomes poor because of the stupid politicians. You can have a war. There are lots of ways to go poor. If a brother be waxen poor and fall in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him. Yea, this is the passage of Leviticus 25 you're concerned about. You think you're concerned about, Dave, or claim you are. Though he be a stranger or a sojourner. So even if it's not a native Israeli, a stranger, a foreigner coming living in your country, you're supposed to relieve him. It doesn't sound like slavery to me, okay? That he may live with thee. Take thou no usury of him. That's interest. Don't charge him interest or increase. But fear thy God, and that thy brother may live with thee. So is a man working off a debt a slave? This is just like almost everybody does. How many of you have ever had to work off a debt for something? Credit card, car, house, something? Okay. So if he should decide to stay with the boss for life, he's to be marked. He makes a conscious, voluntary decision. Boss, I love working here. I want to stay here for life. They take him to the door and take an ice pick and awl and pierce his ear. You pierced your daughter's ears the other day. Okay? If the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him unto the judges, and he shall also bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. So if a man had his ear pierced, you knew, wow, this guy has decided to be somebody else's servant, not slave. He decided, I like this company, they got good benefits, I'm staying right here. Now today, ear piercing has gone crazy, and instead of a sign of submission to some master, it's usually a sign of rebellion. Not always, but people go nuts. Whoa, how many times can we pierce this thing? Well, let's see. Let's put about 30 pounds on there until it drags the ground, and you got to have a wheelbarrow to carry your earlobes around. Okay, anyway, verse 37. Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury. That means don't charge interest, nor lend him thy victuals for increase. That's your food, victuals, pronounced victuals. I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. And if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxen poor, and be sold unto thee, he's broke, he says, look, I'll work for food. Give me a job, I'm poor, okay? Thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant. Don't make him serve like a slave, but as a hired servant. And as a sojourner he shall be with thee, and shall serve thee until the year of Jubilee. Every 50 years in Israel, they had a law, everything went back to the original owner. So if somebody was a dud in a business management and they lost everything, in 50 years your family would get it back. Nobody could accumulate billions of acres and own it and end up owning the whole country like they have in America. In the same chapter, verse 50, 52, and 54 has lots to say about this year of Jubilee when all debts are canceled, all of them. Verse 41, and then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with him, and shall return unto his own family, unto the possession of his father shall he return. So is working 9 to 5 to pay off debts, that's not slavery, is it? No. Walmart employs 1.5 million people in the U.S. alone. Are those employees of Walmart slaves? They have to show up at a certain time. They got to wear a certain uniform. Walmart has, let's see, 2.2 million people worldwide. Walmart is the largest employer in all these blue states. Almost all the rest of them are healthcare providers. Let's see, Colorado, Denver International Airport is the largest provider of jobs. But almost all the rest of them are healthcare. Okay, so a person working at Walmart or any job is not a slave, Dave. They are an employee. Now they have rules to follow, certain behavior, certain, they couldn't use certain vocabulary. They couldn't run around, with their pants hanging down. You used to work at Walmart, right? They got a dress code. They're not slaves, though. They're employees, all right? What employee benefits is Walmart known for? They got all kinds of cool benefits for their people. People want to work there, and they love it. Is a person working for food to stay alive a slave? This is biblical servitude. I'll come to work if you'll feed me and to give me a place to stay. That's what our camp does here. How many people are here? Because we provide a place to stay, and we give you food to eat, and we take care of utilities. I mean, you're not a slave. Come on. Is a person working to pay off a loan for a car a slave to the bank? They're not a slave to the bank. They took out the loan to buy the car. Now they got to pay it off. Yes?
Well, I mean, like working at Walmart. I used to work at Walmart too. That was by choice. That wasn't because
You chose to work there.
I chose to work.
If you don't like it, quit. Right. Is a person working to pay off a loan for a house a slave to the bank? No. He entered into a contract. I would like to borrow your money to buy this house, and I will pay you back. How about a person working to pay off a student loan? Student loan, paid faithfully for 23 years. I borrowed $26,000. I've already paid back $32,000, and I still owe $45,000. That's borderline slavery there. Okay. Sports players can be bought, sold, and traded. Don't they say such and such a team bought this guy for their... Is he a slave? Dave? The weirdest trade in NBA history. Kyle Korver was traded for a copy machine.
Oh, Lord.
One guy was traded for a washing machine. The NBA is the most lucrative business ever. Even though there was a time when the league wasn't that profitable and players didn't make that huge amount they do now, the NBA is one of the most lucrative businesses ever. All these guys get traded, bought, sold, and traded. Are they slaves? No. See, indentured servitude is very different. You could tell somebody, look, I owe you money. Thanks for getting me out of the debt I was in. You rescued me. I'll work for you for 7 years. That's not a slave. That's indentured servitude. In colonial America, it was quite common for people to indenture themselves to a master for a set number of years to work off a debt. Sometimes it was to work off their passage from the old world to America. It was expensive to get across the ocean in those days. Yep.
What about if you don't pay at restaurants and you have to do dishes?
Have to work for food. Okay.
You're enslaved for 4 hours or something?
Yeah. History detectives had indentured servants in the U.S. Indentured servants first arrived in America in the decades following the settlement of Jamestown in 1607. The idea of indentured servitude was born of a need for cheap labor. The earliest settlers soon realized they had lots of land to care for and nobody to care for it. With passage to the colonies expensive for all but the wealthy, the Virginia Company developed a system of indentured servitude to attract workers. Indentured servants became vital to the colonial economy. The timing of the Virginia colony was ideal. The 30 Years' War had left Europe's economy depressed, and many skilled and unskilled laborers were without work. A new life in the New World offered a glimmer of hope. This explains how 1/2 to 2/3 of the immigrants who came to the American colonies arrived as indentured servants. As soon as they get here, they got to go work on a plantation picking cotton or doing something for X number of years to pay off their passage to get here. Servants typically worked 4 to 7 years in exchange for passage, room, board, lodging, and freedom dues. While the life of an indentured servant was harsh and restrictive, it wasn't slavery. What's the difference between slaves and indentured servants? A slave is a person who is from Africa, is enslaved and works for people in the colonies. An indentured servant are people who agreed to work for a person in the colonies. They are from Europe. They both had a trip, worked for a period of time, and lived with a family. Before 1660, only a fraction of Virginia planters held slaves. By 1675, slavery was well established. By 1700, slaves had almost entirely replaced indentured servants. Virginia farmers said, I still need 100 people to pick my cotton. So they started buying slaves, and it was wrong. It was wrong then, it would be wrong now. But the Bible doesn't call them slaves, it calls them servants. Dave, they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but shalt fear thy God. So don't take your servants and rule over them like a harsh taskmaster. Here's the verse you were concerned about. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. The Jewish citizens would be set free every 7 years. Now the foreigners who came there, they might get in debt and be with you as your servant until they could purchase their own freedom or somebody else could purchase it for them. But they could be bought out of this contract. Can't you do that today? If you borrowed money from the bank to buy a car and you're paying them for 5 years, somebody else comes along and says, here, I'll pay it off for you. Well, then it's done. Anybody could pay it off. If you mistreat a servant under God's law, he goes free. Exodus 21, written before Leviticus 25. If a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. If he smite out the manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. So if you mistreat your servant, he gets to go free. Hey, he poked my eye out. Okay, you're free. Debt's canceled. You're gone. So obviously, this is not 19th century colonial slavery. This is a contract. And God said, if you mistreat that guy or girl, they get to go free, okay? Special care was to be given to widows, orphans, and strangers. They were not treated like 19th century antebellum slaves, right? Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him. So even if you hire a foreigner to come be your servant, you can't oppress him. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. God's saying, hey, you remember how it used to be? They just came out of Egypt a couple chapters before this. God said, remember how Pharaoh did to you guys? Don't you do that to your people. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. That would be the orphans. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. And my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword. And your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. I think God's taken this pretty serious, right? So in Acts chapter 6, we saw in those days the number of the disciples was multiplied, and they started complaining because the widows were neglected. We covered that last night. And what did they do? They appointed deacons to take care of this, and all of them were Greek. Psalm 68. The father of the fatherless and a judge of the widows is God in his holy habitation. God setteth the solitary in families, and bringeth out those that are bound with chains, but the rebellious dwell in a dry land. Leviticus 25, the next two verses. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession. And ye shall take them as inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule over one another with rigor. So the foreigners you could take in, but they could still buy their own way out, or their family could buy them out of this contract. If a sojourner or a stranger wax rich by thee, and thy brother that dwelleth by him wax poor, and sell himself unto the stranger or sojourner. So one of the Jews is broke. He goes to one of these foreigners who's come to the land and says, hey, can I have a job? I need a job. I'm in debt. I need money like right now. Okay, here's $50. Now you got to work for me for 4 days, or whatever they did back then. After that he is sold, he may be redeemed again. One of his brethren may redeem him. That means buy them back. People can become poor many ways, okay? Lazy, health, theft, war, pestilence. The Bible says in Proverbs 20, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. They always have an excuse why they can't go to work. It's too cold, it's raining, it's too dark, my back hurts, my grandma in California has a sore toe, I can't come to work today. Always have an excuse, okay? Therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing. You better learn to get up and get to work no matter what. You got to be dying. Yes, sir?
Guy called in at our work and said, I have old air in my tires. I got to change my air.
I have old air in my tires. I need to
I got to change my air.
change the air in the tires. I can't come to work today.
The boss said, you better not come to work today. He's just mad.
Yeah. I taught school 15 years. I missed 4 days in 15 years of teaching school.
That was code.
I got to be dying to go. Huh? That was code for don't come back?
No, that was code for I'm going fishing today.
Oh, I'm going fishing today. I got to change the air in my tires. Okay. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand. If you're not careful with your money, you can spend it all here and there on dumb stuff. There's some dumb things to spend your money on, aren't there?
Yeah, I've done that a lot.
You've done that a lot. I picked up a guy hitchhiking one time. He said, hey, do you mind if I smoke in your car? I said, yes, sir, I do mind, because after you leave, the smell's going to stay here forever. Please don't smoke in my car. I said, tell me, how much do those things cost? And this was a long time ago. He said, they're $1.75 a pack. I said, how many do you smoke a day? He said, 2.5 packs. I got my calculator. I said, 2.5 times $1.75. I said, do you do this every day? He said, yeah, every day. I said, times every day. I said, how long have you been doing this? He said, 30 years. I said, times 30. I said, man, you spent $50,000 on smoke. You could have bought 2 Corvettes back then, 2 Corvettes you could have bought. All kinds of Toyotas, Hondas, rollerblades, skateboards. No, you decided to buy a cloud instead. And now you're standing here with your thumb out asking me for a ride because you couldn't get your cloud started this morning, could you? If you have a slack hand, you will gradually go poor. Duh, okay? He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. Some of you, if you had all the money back you've ever spent on alcohol, could probably buy a nice car or house. Okay? How many times do people sit around and waste hours and hours and hours watching a bunch of grown men play with a ball? Any kind of ball. There are grown men who chase a ball around a cow pasture with a stick and beat it. And when it falls in a hole, everybody claps. Like, what exactly did he accomplish? Dumb. But you can deal with a slack hand and there are lots of ways to become poor. How many of you could go out and eat a meal and spend $20 on yourself on one meal? Okay, could you do that? No problem. 6 hours later, you're hungry again. Could you make peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a glass of milk and get by for less than $1 and be perfectly full, and 6 hours later you're still hungry again? Some people, they just got to have the best food. Okay, if you can afford it, but I think you're dealing with a slack hand and you may end up becoming poor. What's a pair of shoes cost? Nice pair of shoes. $80 or $90?
More than that. More than that.
No,
$11, Walmart. Yeah, okay.
There's people who collect Jordans. They're Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan shoes, what do they cost?
$200 each, and some people have whole closets full.
Closets full of...
That's like a woman's
not
purse. They get,
200.
women have purse fetish.
Well, hold it. Now watch this here. How many have ever heard of
Yeah, they're getting more expensive.
a Jimmy Choo shoe? Jimmy Choo, $4,152 for a pair of shoes. Jimmy Choo.
Doesn't even look cool. What doesn't even look comfortable?
What's a set of rims cost for your car?
They have them up to like $10,000.
Here's some $5,000 rims for your car. How about that?
Is that your money?
That's ugly.
Okay, it's very simple, guys. If a pig is worth 40 bucks, how much is it worth if you put lipstick on it? 40 bucks. This is lipstick on a pig, in my humble, unbiased opinion. So there are lots of ways to become poor. You can be a poor money manager. Some people make lots of money and they don't know how to manage it, and it just dribbles away and they're broke at the end of every paycheck. I picked up a guy hitchhiking one time. He had a real nice suit on, obviously an expensive suit, but it was filthy. And he has unshaven. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Back to Ohio." I said, "Where you been?" He said, "I've been in Las Vegas, Nevada." He said, "I drove out there with a brand new Cadillac, and I think he said $20,000. So this was 40 years ago. He said, "I lost it all. Now I'm hitchhiking back home." I said, "Why do you do that?" He said, "I do this every year." See, gambling is for people who are not good at math. Some people are poor money managers, and they need to work for somebody else. They can't be their own boss, okay? A guy called me today and said, "Man, Brother Hovind, I got to get a job. I lost my job. What do I do?" I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Do you need a job or do you need money?" And so, "I need money." I said, "Okay." I said, "When I was teaching the college class in Texas, one of my college students came and said, 'Brother Hovind, I need a job.' And I asked him the same question. 'Do you need a job or do you need money?' I said, 'Well, I guess I need money, don't I?' I said, 'Yeah, you don't need a job. You need money.' I said, 'Let me ask you a question. What are you good at?' He said, 'Well, nothing.' I said, 'Are you smart enough to clean out the gutters on somebody's house?' This was the college student years ago. He said, 'Yeah, I can clean out gutters on a house.' Okay, so you could stand the ladder up, clean the gutters out, put it in a bag, put it by the front for the garbage pickup, and not damage the gutters and not damage the bushes, and do a good job and leave it clean. You could do that?' He said, 'Yeah.' I said, 'All right, I'll tell you what. I will loan you my ladder for 3 days, but if you listen carefully, you'll be able to buy your own ladder in 3 days. I want you to go to Walmart and get a roll of lawn garbage bags, big garbage bag, plastic bags. I want you to tie my ladder on the top of your car, and I want you to drive around to neighborhoods where they have gutters. It's very important. If you're going to clean out gutters, they have to have gutters. Very important, okay? And here's what I want you to do. As you drive around, you will notice, you can see from the street, some of the gutters need cleaned. The leaves are hanging out, especially if there's little trees growing in them. You know they need cleaned, okay? Here's what you do. You walk up to the door, knock on the door, and say, 'Hello, sir or ma'am. My name is Jeff. I'm putting myself through college. I noticed your gutters need cleaned out.' I'll clean them for $10. Don't say another word. Don't go up there and say, hey, I need a job. You got anything need done around here? You have to see what needs done and suggest it to them. I said, write it down, Jeff. And he did, and he did it. I saw him about a week later at our church. We had a big church, 2,000 people. I said, Jeff, did you find a job yet? He said, yeah, I started my own business, Jeff's Gutter Cleaning Service. I said, oh, yeah, I forgot. I said, how's it going? He said, man, I'm making $150 a day. This was in 1985? Yeah, like $400 a day now. Guy came to my parents' house in Groveland when I was there visiting him, and he came up and knocked on the door. He said, hello, my name is Tim. I'm putting myself through college. I noticed your windows need cleaned. I'll clean all your windows for 20 bucks. My mom said, you're hired. He had a squeegee, big old professional squeegee, bucket of soap, a little soap container and a bucket, and a roll of paper towel. He cleaned all the, now some people can use the whole roll of paper towel on one window, okay? He used the squeegee to do 99% of the work and just used the paper towel for the corner. Like, duh, okay? Anyway, when he got done, he was done in 45 minutes walking out the door with 20 bucks. And this would have been 30 years ago. I went out and talked to him. I said, man, this is great. I love this approach. This is perfect. Start your own company. I said, can I ask how this works for you? He said, well, I only work in the summer and I go to school in the rest of the year. He said, I make about $4,000 or $5,000 a summer. 30 years ago. Yeah.
The gutter guy, did he ever give you back your ladder?
Oh, yeah. After 3 days, he brought my ladder back and he bought his own, had his own. Now, my dad would say, son, if you're going to go fishing to feed your family, don't go throw a hook in the water. Throw 30 hooks in the water. Catch something, okay? You ought to have 10 different sources of income. So if one of them dries up, oh well. I talked to a guy one time. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, nothing. I said, I need a job like that. He said, yeah, I started early in life buying old houses, fixing them up, and renting them out. He said, I now own 30 houses that I rent out. He said, a lot of people work really hard so I can live really nice. Rental income. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But some people are poor managers and they need to work for somebody else because it wouldn't matter how much they made, they'd blow it. How many of you have ever made a lot of money and it's all gone now? Blew it. Okay. Okay, so in Leviticus 25, it says his uncle or his uncle's son might redeem him. So if somebody sells himself into servitude, somebody can buy him back if he's unable to redeem himself. He shall reckon with him that bought him from the year that he was sold unto the year of Jubilee. So they look at the contract and say, okay, the year of Jubilee is coming up in 8 years, and you owe $40,000. Let's do the math here. Okay, I'll sell you to your uncle for whatever. They would always go, because on the year of Jubilee it was going to be canceled. He said, I want to get out before that. Okay, pay the difference and get out. Is a person serving a prison sentence a slave? Dave, you're complaining about the Bible justifying slavery. You're thinking it does. Is this slavery? Yeah. Now that would be slavery. America is the largest prison system in the entire world. I wrote a book on it called The Kennel. It's down in the bookstore about the prison system. If you haven't read that, you ought to read that. Okay, I wrote it while I was in prison. That is slavery. The second and third place is China and Russia. America has more prisoners than China and Russia together, and they are second and third place. Wow. They have learned prison is a giant money-making racket. In the Bible, no prisons. Under God's law, you get a fine, a beating, or get executed. Now, when they give somebody a death sentence, or give them a life sentence, that's actually a death sentence. It just takes longer and costs a lot more. Anyway, slavery is common all over the world today, Dave. Are you concerned about this, or are you concerned about God's commandments about slavery 3,600 years ago? Are you really concerned about slavery? If so, there's plenty to do. Modern incidents of slavery, it's all over the world. How about human trafficking? It's in America. Are you concerned about that? Or are you concerned about finding something in the Bible to discredit it so you can reject it as an authority? What is modern slavery in America? Learn how and when to remove this template message. I don't care about that. I should not have read that. Disregard that. Okay. Slavery is a system that requires workers to work against their will for little or no compensation. In modern day terms, this practice is referred to as human trafficking. 2016 Global Slavery Index, published in the Walk Free Foundation, estimates 45 million people are in some form of slavery in 167 countries. 58% of people living in slavery are living in just 5 countries: India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan. Modern forms of slavery can include debt leverage, when a person is forced to work for free to pay off a debt, child slavery, forced marriage, domestic servitude, forced labor where victims are made to work through violence and intimidation. Now that's slavery. So Dave, you asked a question, 1B out of your 20 questions in your 5 you sent. Does the Bible condone slavery? Well, here's some points to ponder and we'll quit. First, you got to get the right Bible before you criticize. Okay, get a King James. Secondly, you need to find what the word slave really means to people 3,600 years ago. 3, God did not create or endorse 19th century type slavery. Kidnapping was the death penalty. This proves the Bible does not condone slavery. God does not. People did it, but God never said to do it. Biblical servitude was to help the poor. A man could hire himself out to provide food, housing, clothing, etc. for his family, even for life. He could decide to do it for life if he wanted. Don't many businesses offer you, if you work here 20 years, you get a full retirement? What's the military do, 20 years?
20 years for,
Yeah.
I think 50.
Yeah. If you want to do a contract, go for it. Most biblical servitude was voluntary, just as job hunting today is voluntary. Slaves were set free after working 6 years, or someone else could pay their debt and free them right away. When they were released, the master supplied their needs. He didn't send them away empty. He gave them something that he had started with. One of the guys that we sent out of here a couple months ago decided he wanted to go somewhere else. I said, hey, I'll give you a couple $100 worth of tools so you can start your own company. I want to help people. If they want to get out on their own, great. Masters were commanded to treat them with respect. If a master mistreated his slave, he would be punished. If a servant went free, his wife and family went out with him, Exodus 21. The children of Israel were to all be servants to God. I'm not a slave to God, I'm a servant. Servants had equal rights. They could own property. They could purchase their own freedom. Servitude in the Bible was never based on race. Widows, orphans, strangers were protected under the law from harsh treatment. Others could pay their debt and secure their freedom. That's not 19th century antebellum slavery, Dave. So no, Dave, the Bible does not condone or endorse slavery. Stop using that excuse as a reason to reject God's word as the ultimate authority over your life. There are some great videos. This guy did a fabulous video on, does the Bible support slavery? And he goes through all the reasons, no, it doesn't. And many of the comments are these thumbs down and negative comments because he's a black man. How dare you? This is our race card we like to play all the time. He's saying, guys, the Bible doesn't endorse what they did to the blacks in the South in the 1800s. Stop using the race card. And they get mad at him for saying that, but he's right, okay? This is a great video. Doesn't the Bible condone slavery? By Abdu Murray. Really enjoyed that one. How about by Bodhi Hodge? No, the Bible does not endorse slavery. This one by John MacArthur is excellent. The Bible does not endorse slavery. This one is fabulous. I never heard of this guy, Paul Copan, but I'm going to listen to more of his stuff. That was good. Does God sanction slavery? No, he does not. Now, John Newton brought people into real slavery. He said, I'm not the man I ought to be. I'm not the man I wish to be. I'm not the man I hope to be. But by the grace of God, I'm not the man I used to be. Dave, God can save you. He wants you to be one of his children. He loves you. God loves you, and I'm trying. But you need whack, son. Don't use slavery as a reason to reject God's authority. God made this world. He wrote a book, and it is flawless, perfect. Next week, we're going to take on your other objection. We got, looks like 2 more weeks on Dave. Sorry about that. I can't get all 20 questions in one program, but we're going to handle it. Does the Bible endorse genocide? No, it does not, except for a couple of reasons that are very good, legitimate reasons, which we still do in America today. I'll show you next week. Okay, Dinosaur Adventureland's newest edition. We got a bunch of bunnies. How many have seen the baby bunnies in there? And born last night, the newest edition, a baby donkey. We need a name for this little girl.
Cinnamon.
Down.
Fumble.
Cinnamon?
Stumble.
Thumble?
Cinnamon.
What?
Dale.
Stumble.
Stumble.
No, Thumbelina.
Or not a
Thumbelina?
Ugly.
Ugly. Dumb. No, okay. Come up with a name. Okay. So you asked me to defend the relevance and validity of these questions, Dave. I think I did. Okay. Next week, genocide. We'll talk about that. All right. Any questions out of this group here? Slavery?
What was that Bible verse that he said it? God said it right directly. He said, if you buy and if you sell people, then you shouldn't be doing that.
Well, don't kidnap them and sell them. Yeah. Death penalty if you do that.
Clear as day.
It's clear as day. Don't do that. God said, I'll come kill you, you know. So, all right, Dave, we want you to get saved. I want you to become one of God's children. You're a brilliant man in many areas, excellent teacher. I would like you to be a creation teacher. Come sit here, and we'll talk about how you got converted, and we'll do an interview, and Dave can say, boy, thank you, Kent. You rescued me. I was going to go to hell, wasn't I? Yeah, you were. Thank you. I'm ready to go spread the gospel now. Yay. See you next week. Okay, bye.